So my name is Maciej, my surname is Treder, this is my second time in Ukraine. My first time was in Kiev framework JavaScript days. And today I would like to speak about the Angular Universal. A little bit about my background as well. I am working for the Akamai Technologies. How many of you know this company? Oh, quite nice. I am surprised. I was thinking that nobody would raise the hand. So for all who don't know this company, we are the content delivery network. So what we are doing on behalf of our customers, we are trying to bring the content to the end users as fast as it could be done. And we are doing that by propagating this data along the thousands of servers which we are owning around the world. And the single-page applications are from the content delivery network a kind of pain, because when you are developing the single-page application, what you are doing, in fact, you are producing an index HTML, which is a really tiny thing with a small amount of tags. And you are bringing to your user the huge JavaScript, which is responsible for bootstrap on the browser side, render the view, pull the data which you want to display. And this is the problem, because whatever your user will ping on the server side, whichever route it will choose. Let's say we have a single-page application which is an online shop, and we have a product page which is myshop.com/product/product ID. So when you are hitting this URL, when user is hitting this URL, he get that tiny HTML with tons of JavaScript. And we, as a content delivery network, as Akamai, and web crawlers like Googlebot and any system which is prefetching data, like social networks, which are trying to make the links pre-rendered, they have nothing to cache, they had nothing to display, in fact. And what Angular Universal is a solution for that. It's bringing the Angular logic, everything what is done on your user browser, to the server on which you are running, and it is often the Node.js server. In fact, a lot of you could think that this is it, and it's quite easy to do that. And in fact, it is if your application is a super basic one. But you need to think about a couple things. First of all, the problem is that some objects which are available in the browser, they are not available on the server side. Because idea behind the Universal is to use the same code base on both edges. So what if I have some animations on my page? What if I am using I want to provide my user the translations to different languages, and I am determining what language user is using basing on his local settings, and I could pull them out from the Windows object on the browser side, but on the Node.js I don't have these objects. Yep. So probably the code would broke in such case. So this is the first thing which you need to be aware of when you are working with the server-side rendering. The another thing is that what we are trying to do with SSR, when I'm saying SSR, I'm thinking server-side rendering. What we are trying to do is to bring the first meaningful page much quicker to our user. With the traditional approach, we are bringing the content super fast, but often users see a loader which is saying wait for Angular to bootstrap and all the data to be shipped to you. What we are doing with Universal is bringing that rich HTML so browser can render it immediately. Then we have a small amount of time for oh, the slides are back.
It's yours. We found the charger.
Give them a hand. And this is my handle. You can find me on Twitter and all of those networks. Go on. Okay, so quickly outline. We already said a little bit what is the pitfall and what is the server-side rendering. Everything I'm going to indicate by the small label at the bottom, every bunch of information. So sorry for the time, but I think we lost about 10 minutes. So I will go quickly by the beginning. So what you are often doing, you are using the ng serve when you are developing the application, so you are using the just-in-time compiler. Later on, you are trying with the ahead-of-time compiler using ng-build. If everything works, you are going to the prod flag, which is minimizing your code, making it tree-shaked, etc., etc., etc. Here you can see the comparison of those two. So prod is on the right side, is working a little bit faster. And here we are coming what I mentioned as a SPA problem. So putting every request touching the same index.html file. You could think about that like it's displayed on this scheme, or how the user sees that. So we got the first guy which is coming to this /get/, so this is our index. We are serving him this HTML and tons of JavaScript, and if another user will come, we will shipping to this person exactly same files, which on the user side looks like that. So this is almost nothing for the browser. Everything is in this JavaScript logic. What server-side rendering is, one more time quickly. So for this another page request, we are rendering and bringing a completely different HTML and JavaScript together, rendered on Node.js, thanks to moving the Angular logic to the server. So now our output is much richer. Here is an example of rendered the super simple application which you are getting when you are generating new project with the Angular CLI. So this base 64 encoded string is just an Angular logo. Okay, going forward, as I said, prefetching data in Facebook or bots like Googlebot, they are really depending on what your origin, in fact, responds to the given request. Comparing this, the performance of the universal and the prod flag, you can see that the results are quite the same about the JavaScript performance, but as I said, there is one super important thing which you need to remember, is that if you are not using universal, you are putting your user in the moment when the first meaningful pain comes after the application bootstraps. With server-side rendering, you bring it immediately with HTML. How to start? Two ways, the official guide and the non-official guide. The NG Toolkit is a project which is founded by me. It's completely open source. I'm trying hard to maintain it, but it's really hard because of lack of time. With the official guide, what you need to do is just use the schematics. So you are typing ng-add and use the official library. What this command is doing for you is adjusting your project, creating some new files. So it's creating the Webpack server config, the entry point for your server application for Node.js. The basic changes are adding the app server module, which will be the bootstrap module for the server-side application. This is what official guide says, but I strongly recommend you to add one more module, which would be the browser module, so you can keep your dependencies, in the separate file something what is specific for browser, in the separate file something what is specific for server, and common imports in the app module, which is imported in both of them. So you could think about that as two applications, one on server, one on browser, with the common core. If you will choose to use ng Toolkit Universal, it will create these two files for you, so you won't need to adjust your project. A part of that, it will come with some other nice functionalities, which we are going to cover in the minutes. And after you will perform this command, or the official one command, you are just running the npm run build, npm run server, and you are ready to go. Your production setup is already done. Okay, under the hood, both of those, both of those under the hood, as I said, they are creating this entry point for server. It's super simple. I keep it just for the review. So they are setting up the Express application. We are using the ng Express engine as an HTML for rendering the HTML, and providing the lazy loaded stuff. We need to provide it explicitly. We are getting it from our build, and just saying what is the entry point. This is that app server module. Another thing in the server TS is just it's similar to this configuration which we saw from Apache, from htaccess, just pointing every route which is coming to our server to be rendered by just an initialized application. A part of that, for any static stuff like images, fonts, cascading style sheets, and so on and so on and so on, we are just driving the requests to the old disk from the browser where it can load the assets. Okay, so all of us know already what is server-side rendering. We covered this part. So we can now move, here you can find the ng Toolkit project, if this will guide you directly to the GitHub. And now let's move to the browser versus server, that problems which I said that we could have. So on the server side, we have different objects than we can find on the browser side. So let's say that we want to make this example about the translations provided for the customer. So I'm going to determine what is the browser language said by using just the window object, which will cause on the server side the rendering error. I will get a really nice stack trace which will say that window object is not defined here, so I'm not able to use it. So how can I solve that? How can I still get an information about language? How can I still use the common shared code base? Because as you can see, this is the part already of a component. This is not the ng on init, it's a lifecycle hook, which we are using in the component, not in module. So this is probably the part of that common module. So I want to have the same shared code base. And the Angular team comes with two really nice helpers, which is Platform Browser and Platform Server. And the platform ID. This slide is broken, unfortunately. I think that this is because the web version of the keynote doesn't support everything. What is in constructor, this blank space here, is filled by the injection token, which you can see at the very top, the platform ID token. And we are taking this token, putting under the private platform ID, which we are using later on with let me just jump here. Here we are putting the platform browser. So I'm using the platform ID inside. This is a function. It's returning me Boolean, so I'm saying that, hey, I'm browser, great. And here you can see how it's exactly working. So I'm on the server. I'm console logged that I'm on the server. Okay, so the real-life example of the translation of this use case, what I'm going to show you is how you can create, how you can go with another path to to resolve the problem of the different platforms. And I'm going to show you the wrapper service for the window object. What we are going to do is we will use the East Platform server and East Platform browser, determine on which platform we are, and based on that we are going to use the request object, which is available, which is installed with the ng Universal Express Engine tokens. You can see it in the second line. And this kind of code, which is just printing out, if I am on the server, the headers which I received from the request, and one of these headers is information about the language. So I'm going to create the service. If I am on the browser, I will return the information about language from the window object. If I am on the server, I will grab the request, take out the language from the header, and give it back to the application. So this is how the server looks like. And at the very bottom, we are just returning the window object, which is, as we said, the real window or the mocked one filled up with the information from different sources. So now we can change this console log window navigator, which was breaking the code execution, to just this window, and the service will determine where we are and how to get the information, how to execute the code. With the ng Toolkit Universal, if you would use the non-official way which I showed you, you will get the service inside the Universal module. So let's now take a look and go one step forward. We have we determine where we are inside the service. Now we can make a use of the two different entry points for the application, that two different modules. As I promised you, we are going to use the translation service. On my end is ngx translate. I prepared the JSON, which this is the key value JSON with just one sentence. So depending on the user settings, I'm going to display welcome to, or let me try. I was learning Russian for 2 years. Laskawo prosimo w. And just using the translate pipe. What I need to give the Angular to make ngx translate working is first of all import the module in my app module, the translator module, and the translator module is expecting from me that I will provide the loader for the translation files. So on the browser side, it's super easy because I'm going to load the different translation files via HTTP service. So I'm just providing HTTP. This loader is took from the library provided by the module developers. But on the server side, it's a little bit more complicated because it doesn't make, again, I'm providing the translator module and I'm going to provide another loader function. Because it doesn't make sense to make the HTTP calls from the server A to server A, because I'm still within the same origin, I am going to read the files directly from the file system and just feed them to the loader. So this is the moment where I'm going to use completely different imports for the server side code. And finally, I can use the translate service inside the component, basing on the what language is set in the user settings. I can load the default translation for him. You can see in the ng onInit the solution which we provided with the wrapper service. This is our window object wrap around the bulletproof service. Here you can find the article, which is about providing this translation. Here in this article you have much more elaboration about this particular solution. Okay, next one, API optimization. So as I said at the very beginning, before the slides were working and after the slides were working, the server-side rendering is not only about being SEO friendly, but it's also about boosting your application, about bringing this meaningful paint much quicker to the user. And the problem starts. First, let's speak about dry. How many of you know this abbreviation? What this stands for? Okay, perfect. So I added a small c here and said, don't repeat your calls. What I have on my mind is that if you will have a component like that, which is making a request to some REST service, how this code is executed. So first the request comes to the Node.js, to my origin, then my application is bootstrapped, so it's making a call to the external API. This is the point 2. I got the request, it's point 3. I'm putting the request into view, sending it back to the user. The browser sees that I have a JavaScript there, so it bootstraps the application, and what Angular do is again executing the ng on init lifecycle hook and making this call one more time. And really often it gets exactly same data, but we are just making 2 stupid dummy calls while we could do one. So now the question comes, if I can somehow inform the browser, the Angular on the browser side, that I already made this call and you don't need to repeat it, here you got a cache and just take information from the cache. This is what you could see here on this slide. So I'm making the call, the backend is making it, and bringing it together with JavaScript HTML, and nothing more is created, nothing more is executed on the browser side. So this is what you can achieve with the HTTP cache module. This is a shadow module for the HTTP client, and this is the official one from the ng Universal Common. What it does under the hood, it's using the HTTP interceptor and the transfer state module. How many of you know how HTTP interceptors work? Few. Okay, we will cover it quickly. What the transfer state module is just a storage, is a key value storage with a string key and string value, which is exchanged between the server and browser. So we have basic API like for any storage. So we can get, set, and check if we have some key or remove the value from the storage. So we are going to use this transfer state module together with the HTTP interceptor, which is a mechanism which we are putting to the... So if you will write an HTTP interceptor and provide it to your application, whenever Angular will try to perform some call to HTTP on the HTTP protocol, and it doesn't matter if it is post, get, put, or anything different, you can adjust the logic inside of this call. You can add, for example, add some headers or manipulate this call before it will go out from the JavaScript environment. And we are going to use HTTP interceptor to take a look if the response for given request is already in the transfer state registry, and if it is there, we are going to provide the response from this registry instead of performing the real call to the API. So this is the example of the interceptor. So if the event which is coming to the interceptor is a response, we are setting up the transfer state object with the set method from the API. And now, a little bit, oh, give me a sec, because I lost myself. Yeah. Okay. So we just so we are now in the moment when we are checking if we are performing GET, because in the most cases something what we want to cache is the GET response. So this is what we want to overshadow. If the request which we are performing is not GET, we are just giving the application the original response. The Angular will make the request. And if we are performing GET on the other side, we are making this key. This is just an example of of a little bit more complicated interceptor. So we are setting up the key in the transfer state, checking if we stored the response. If we did, we are sending the response from the storage. If not, we are just performing the regular request. Okay, and what we need to do is to provide the interceptors. This one is for the server side. This one is for the browser side. And we just need to provide them inside our browser and server modules, those two entry points of the application. Okay, going forward, the performance, as I said, it's not only about being SEO, it's also about the performance. And one of the biggest pitfalls, in my opinion, is that what Angular is doing on the server side as well, when it's rendering a view, it's waiting till all observables will complete. So as long as you don't have a response from the API, your server side will be spinning and spinning and spinning, waiting for this response, and after the response comes, finally, okay, I got the HTML rendered, here you are. So let's say my API is responding in 20 seconds. My whole application will respond in 20 seconds. So this is something what we definitely want to avoid. And here the resolvers come to the action, because what I can do, thanks to the East Platform server and the East Platform browser, I can check if I am on the browser side, and if I am, I want to wait for this call to resolve as long as it needed. But if I am on the server side, I am wrapping it inside the observable which I am creating. If this observable will respond in some moment, I'm just subscribing and pushing this response to my observable. This is what you can see in the subject.next response. But I am making the watchdog object. The timer method from the RxJS library gives me an observable which just emits once after a given amount of milliseconds. So here, after half of the second, I am just emitting, and I am using this with the pipe method to take until this watchdog will emit. So I am waiting here as long for the response as the watchdog won't emit, so half an hour. And if watchdog will emit before API response, I am pushing some default value, or in this moment, in this example, the timeout information. On the diagram, it looks like that the request comes to my origin. My origin is making the call to the external API. Let's say the external API responds within half second, so I am giving back to the browser the fully rendered view. But if my API won't respond within this half second, the watchdog fires. So I am going to my user with some, let's say, half rendered view. It's just rendered view, but without the data which should come from the API. And then the browser is performing this request again and waits for the response as much as it is necessary to feed the application with the data. Again, some resources about don't repeat calls and performance of the Angular Universal API calls. And again, with the QR code, which is leading you to this page. And the last step, last but not least, so deployment of the server-side rendering, because often when you have the single-page application, you are hosting is from some static hosting like Amazon S3 or something like that. It's just HTML and JavaScript. What you need with server-side rendering is then additional compute resources on your backend. So really often people choose to go with some expensive solution like EC2 container or any other dedicated server. But there is a solution for that. There is a really cheap alternative which is called the serverless environment. And what the serverless environment is, sometimes called function as a service, is just a bunch of compute resources which are responding to the given particular request. And this is the moment when the machine under this compute resources, it's booted for you, and you are just paying for the compute time for this particular request, not for 24 hours of running of the machine. So this is one way of deploying the server-side rendered applications. Another solution, if you still want to use the static hosting and be SEO friendly, you can do something on top of Universal, what is called Prerender. And what is that? Is that we are building the universal application, we are running the Node.js server on our development machine, and just on the build time we are visiting each road in the application, making a snapshot of this HTML, putting it to some static folder, and publishing these rendered files to the static hosting. And this is something what you get additional with the NG toolkit, if you will use NG toolkit and not the official schematics from the Angular. So summarizing that all what have been said, and comparing the NG build version of developing application, the production ones, versus pre-render versus server-side rendering. So we started with SEO, which definitely not works with the traditional way of building apps. About SEO and performing the external calls, unfortunately with Prerender, of course, you are not able to feed application with the data on the server side because you have no server side, in fact. You are not running Angular or any server. Regarding performance, all of them are performing really well. From my experience, the Prerender performs more than well. It's a demon, is a speed demon, in fact, about the bringing this first meaningful page and content super quick to the user. Additional backend logic, again, server-side rendering wins here, as we said about external calls, because you have no resource at the backend, there is no space for additional logic. With server-side rendering, another process that you can perform logic like two-factor authentication of your user based on the cookie value, etc. You can build the whole Node.js application on the backend and communicate it with the front end written in Angular. And finally, the difficulty. For sure, typing just ng-build prod is super easy. The Angular Universal at Prerender is a little bit complicated thing. But nowadays, with all of those schematics which are around, and I hope that with those knowledge which I tried to share with you, those red crosses become the green bullets. So that's all from my side. Again, my handle, I'm available on all of those social networks. I'm going to share these slides, maybe not today, but tomorrow. I try my best to do this today, but I'm just going for my flight within the next 2 hours. And for sure, I will post it to Twitter. So thank you for having me here, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you. So probably before the flight you have 10 minutes for questions. Yeah. And basically the lunch started. and we can spend 5-7 minutes more to some live questions, or you can have some rest on Speaker's Corner on beanbags.
Yeah, sure.
And guys could find you and ask their questions. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much.